Good morning, everyone. We're back again. Going to show you I'm working on my custom dash and console. I've got to put in a defroster vent up by the windshield there. The dash is really tight for room, just the way I designed it. So it's going to be a little bit of a project, but I'm going to give it a try here and see if I can film this, the procedures I go through to make this little duct and get it mounted. So this might drag on for a bit, but we'll show you what we're doing. So we got, yesterday I made a template for cutting out for my paddle setup for the air ride. All the valves and everything are going to sit in the dash in front of the shifter. There's the valve set up there. I got some lines and stuff to run to it. So these are the fittings, or the ports where the air goes out to the airbags, and then there's a T goes in there, and there's a small line comes out, and there's two gauges, and each is a dual gauge, one for each side. So those four small lines will come out of the valve, curl down, and then go into the back of those valves in the console there. And then the dash here, I'm planning on putting a single port across probably a third of the way for the defroster. Well, it's just going to be one centered there. The issue is I have a 3/16 steel plate that is my mounting flange for the dash, and this is all I have for room for the hose for the defroster to come out of. So it's going to be a little tricky to build that. It's something that's going to have to go in after the dash is bolted on. The dash is held on with 5 bolts at the top and then 2 rivet nuts at the bottom. I have, where did I put them? I have some special bolts that I made up for mounting the dash. I must have put them in a safe spot so that I wouldn't lose them, and can't remember where that safe spot is. So some of you fellows will resemble that, have the same issue. I know they're here somewhere, but I'll find them. They're 1/4 inch by 2.5, and they have a tab welded to them so that I can actually reach in and hold them in place as I'm bolting it together here. So once I get things rolling along here and my buck and template made up, I'll bring you back and show you what's happening. Okay guys, so we're back again. I took a piece of hardwood. This is a piece of Douglas fir, pretty hard stuff. I made it in the pattern for my defroster vent. As you can see, I shaped it, rounded the edges, put the triangle pattern on it. It's exactly the shape I want the steel to be for the vent that bolts up to the bottom side of the dash. I then made a pattern for it out of cardboard, and the pattern, you want it to be approximately, for this jig anyhow, you want it about 1/2 inch larger all the way around to allow for our steel to fold over in the corners here and across the top. So then I took my pattern and I cut out 2 pieces, one for each half, and this is the first one I've got shaped. As you can see, it follows the shape of my buck perfectly. So what you do with it, I clamp it in the vise and I slowly tap it over with a hammer to form the shape I want. Then what I'll do is I'll trim these along the center line. I'll tack weld them together and then finish weld them. So what you're doing when you're beating it on the buck here is this material, you end up with a bunch of extra, and you can cut a pie out of it and bring it together, but you lose some strength and work on it. So what you're doing in the sides here is you're gotta slowly tap it from each side, and what it does is it forces the molecules of the steel together and actually makes it thicker in the corner. You got to be really careful that you don't get any puckers in it and foldovers, or it'll destroy the piece on you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the buck set up in my vise with the second half, and then I'll show you the procedure for folding it over. We'll be back. I have the piece set up in the vise. I put a reference mark on it on the center line of my buck. I'm going to work on one half at a time. Now, rolling it over on the top edge is really easy, and on the end, but you have to work this really slowly around so that you don't get those puckers and stuff in there. So I'll start beating on this, and you can follow along here. I'll probably put this on high speed once I get it rolling. Move some crap out of the way under the bench. Okay, hopefully we got you set up there good. As you can see, I'm working back and forth across here. What it's doing is gathering that steel together, actually shrinking it around the edge. Just see if I can position you here so that you can see that a little better. So as you can see, it's gathering it up and forming the roll around the edge here. This whole procedure takes quite a while, probably be 20-25 minutes, shaping the whole piece, both sides. It'll try and add a pucker at the back side here. You've got to watch that. As you can see, this top edge goes really easy. You got to work it around. I'm going to end up with too much material here, and it's trying to shrink too much. So what I'll do is, about halfway through the process, I'll trim a little bit of this excess off. As you can see, it's getting quite a bit closer here. The fine tuning will start. I'll get it tucked right in there. I've got a bit of a straight spot that's pulled in on the back side here that I'll address after I trim this. Okay, so as you can see, it's almost sitting flush, a little bit out here. I'm going to just take it out of the jig and I'm going to snip this little edge off and then put it back in. Here's my center mark I got lined up. And as you can see, I think you can see it in there. This is quite a bit past center, so that's the material I'm going to trim off so that I don't have to try and shrink all of that. You want to leave it a little proud so that you end up with some material for welding. And as you can see, this is where I ended up with a little pucker. It's trying to flatten out there. Put this back in my jig, flush it up. I'm going to leave it a little bit out further this time so that I can work that wrinkle out. Ouch, that was pink. Gonna have a blood blister from that one. The more you work it back and forth towards the center, the more material you gather up, and then the nicer it'll fit on your buck. I really don't have to get that carried away on this piece. It's a piece nobody's ever going to see. It's going to be buried under the dash. The only person going to know how good it is me and you guys. So. Okay, so I got that worked. That flat spot has kind of moved back. I'm going to keep working that out. What's happening there is there's a little bit of extra material that's trying to work its way around. So I got that flattened out here, but overall it fits pretty good. I'll just grab the other piece. So once they're trimmed up, it should work pretty good once I get them welded together. It'll make a nice duct. A little bit wider than I want right now, but once I trim it up, it'll be right on. So I'll continue on, finish the rest of bucking this one, and then once I get everything trimmed up and ready to tack together, I'll bring you back and show you the rest of the procedure. Okay, so I have both pieces are bucked, fitting the jig pretty good. As you can see now, this is my center line. This is the material I have to trim off. Both sides are about the same. I'm just going to use a zip disc on my angle grinder to get that done. Now, for you guys out there, this company here, Keen Abrasives, they have tons of abrasive materials, flap discs, pretty much everything. These zip discs are less than $1 a piece. They are virtually indestructible. I have never broke one while I was cutting. I've broke them dropping my grinder on the floor. Really good pricing. In Canada, if you're from Canada, they ship out of Ontario. They also have an eBay store for the US, and they ship out of the States. So don't even hesitate to buy these. They're wicked good. I get a package of 50, and I believe it's about $48 delivered to my door. So Okay, I'm just going to trim this one off here now. Hopefully it don't get too loud. Safety glasses, gloves. Okay, there was only a couple of spots that were thick enough to get in with the angle grinder. I will take it to my belt sander and finish it down to the line, and then I'll trim the other one up the same way, set it all up on the jig here, and we can tack weld it together. Guys, so we're back. I've got the two pieces trimmed up, got a little bit of a gap in between them. What I'll do now is I'll do about 3 or 4 tacks on each side. Just do a little bit of finish hammering just to make sure that everything's flush and level to weld it up. Then I'll weld the seam, grind it down. Then I can start working on making the bottom where I can put a piece of tubing. Probably going to use 1.5 inches to tie into my duct. And then we'll start on the top edge treatment here. Once I've got this finished, I'm going to trim my buck down a little bit so that this piece will fit inside, and then I'm going to bend this flange down so that I have something to weld a mounting bracket to that'll screw to the underside of the dash. So I'll be back again, a little bit more progress. Got to go off to work now and be back later. Okay guys, so we're back at it here. I've got the unit is all welded up. I ground the weld down, squared up the top edge here. I'm now going to take my buck and I'm going to take 3/8 to 1/2 inch off the top of it and then push it back in, and that'll be my guide for bending this over into a flange to fasten it to the bottom underside of the dash there. So I'll just give this a quick cut and then we'll be back here and I'll show you the process. Okay, so we're back here. I have my buck. He's been cut down, recessed in. It's roughly 3/8 inch. I have it set at 3/8 inch on my vise, and I have a couple of pieces of angle iron, one on each side, that's going to give me a nice flat area for bucking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this flange down on both sides. When I get to the end here, I'll have to use a dolly and a hammer and gently tap it down. It's probably going to tear out on the end here where the weld is because it won't stretch because it's too hard. Those I'll just have to weld back up when I'm done. So I'll just start hammering on her here and show you how it'll fold over. Sorry about that. Okay, so as you can see, this lip folded over really nicely, nice and flat. I'll finish going all the way around, and then I'll bring you back and show you the finished product here. Okay, so I have this end is done. It's all nice and flat, about 1/4 of an inch thick there and about 1/2 an inch down the sides, so it shrunk that a little bit. So I'll just show you the process on the other end here. Just have to adjust this other angle iron a bit. Real important to keep the angles real tight against the metal. So what I've got is just a 1/2 round buck here. Get this in the right position. Okay, I'll just take the camera out of the bipod here, or the tripod. So as you can see, we've got nice flat mounting area. If I look from the end, you can see how nice and flat it is. It's going to give me a nice area to mount that right underneath the dash. So I'm going to take it out of the buck here, see how it fits, and then move on to the next process. Okay, so we're back at it again. So here's the finished defroster duct. What I ended up doing was I didn't have enough material in the rollover here, because you just can't shrink and stretch that much material. So I ground them off and I just welded a small piece of 18 gauge on. Both ends the same way. Then I've put in a rivet nut on each end. That's what's going to hold the ducts into the dash. I'm going to put a bit of foam around to seal it to the underside of the dash. And the next step I did was figuring out where it went in the dash, and I cut this opening where the defrost air will come out. I left a little strip in the center here for strength, just to stop the dash from going out of shape, because this dash was all made in using the same methods that I used to build this the duct. I built a buck and formed each piece to fit the buck. The lower piece, the upper piece, split them down the center, welded them together. Same thing up top here and on the ends. I'll just take you over and show you the buck here. I'm not sure if I did a video on that. I don't think so. I think it was before I was doing YouTube. Through the obstacle course. But there's the buck. That's what I used to form all of the pieces and get it all set up and tacked together on there, then pulled it all off and welded it up. So I'll just put this duct into the dash and then show you what the rest of the plan is for this. I didn't think I'd bother showing you welding these little tabs on and putting in the rivet nuts. It's not like it's anything spectacular. So, okay, so it's orientated right, comes up inside. I'm using 1024 truss head stainless steel screws for all of the fasteners on the inside of this. They're a nice low profile screw, and they look, I think they look better than like a pan head or something like that. This is also adding a whole bunch of strength to this portion of the dash. Okay, so once that's in like that, I'm going to take, I've got a leftover chunk of 1 3/4 mandrel bent from my headers, and I'm going to make an inlet for the air to come in and weld it into the bottom of the duct there. It's going to take a little bit of dicking around to get this to fit properly. I'm just going to have a short stub stick out so that I can put the hose on and go down to the vent there. So that's the next thing. Once I get it figured out how that's going to go in there, I'll bring you back and show you how I fastened it up and then welded it all together. Okay guys, I've got my piece of 1 3/4 tubing cut. I've hammered it to shape. I'm going to clean that up a little bit. I've got it so that it fits where I want it on the duct here. What I'm going to do is put one little tack on there and a little tack here, and then I'll pull the piece out and I'll put a mark around where the two intersect. Cut this off so that I have an opening the same size as this. Then I'll put the two pieces back together on the tack, test fit it with a tack weld, and then pull it out and finish weld it and clean the welds all up. So once I get this all pulled out with it tack welded together, I'll show you the procedure to make the transition from tubing into the duct. Okay. That was in your face. So what I've done, I have the piece tacked up. I've run a felt pen mark around the bottom of the duct where I need to cut the duct open so that we have airflow inside. So what I'll do is I'll just bust these two little spot welds off. I'll trim the duct. I'll come back to my two spot welds, put a quick tack on, and then make sure the fit's good, and then I'll finish welding this up, and then I can trim this end off to where the length I need so that I can clamp my hose on. Okay, so here's our fit on the tube. As you can see, we've got a nice clean opening, almost the same diameter as the tube. I'm just going to weld it all up here, and then I can do the final fit, trim this back end off, and this piece will be almost done. I'm going to put a little bit of a deflector in here that'll tip the air and force it towards the windshield. It'll be kind of concealed so that you can't see it from the dash. Okay guys, so I got this unit all completed. I've got it the final welds done on it. I bent a little diverter in here. I don't know if you can see that, it's kind of curved. This was such a big area, I didn't have a lot of volume but not a lot of air movement coming through it. So this diverter cut the size of it down a little bit, and it now it'll deflect the air right at the windshield. So that piece is now complete. The way I fastened that in, I drilled 4 holes and I just button welded it in. So I don't know if it's worth it or not. It took me about 3.5 hours to build that, but it was about $95 US for one that wouldn't work. So I think I'm way further ahead because it's a custom piece. So as you guys can see, you don't need a whole lot of different or special tools. Piece of wood, some hammers, a couple dollies. little bit of ingenuity, and you can make pretty much anything you want out of steel. This could be really done pretty if it was going to be visible, which it isn't. It still turned out really nice in my opinion, so don't be afraid to bang on some steel and make what you need instead of buying what you need. Thanks guys, make sure you hit the subscribe button.